So today we're going to talk about one of the most powerful, most complicated relationships there is, the one between a parent and their son. And we're going to be really honest about it. It's a journey that can bring some of the most profound joy imaginable, but it can also lead to heartbreaking disappointment. It's a story of hopes, of reality, and of a love that somehow, through it all, seems to endure. Let's get into it.
Everything, it all starts right here. This single image, it just perfectly captures that origin point. A tiny hand, reaching up, holding on with a trust so complete, it's almost breathtaking. This right here, this is the foundation. It's pure connection. It's before the world rushes in with all its noise and complications. For a parent, this is the anchor. That memory of a bond that felt so simple, so absolute. And from that very first touch, we move into the first chapter of this whole story. This is what we could call the promise of parenthood. It's a time just filled with this universe of hope, where every possibility feels real and the future just looks like this wide-open road of shared happiness. And the feeling that comes with it, well, it can only be described as a profound joy. The second a son comes into your life, your world just fundamentally shifts. And it's not just about the big things, the first steps or the graduation day. It's all the small moments in between. Hearing him laugh, watching him try to explain some new game he made up, even cleaning up a scraped knee. For a parent, every single one of those moments is like a thread you're weaving into the story of your own life. It's a source of pride and a kind of love that's almost impossible to put into words. You see, every parent has his private universe of dreams for their son. You hope he'll be a good person, that he finds something he's passionate about, that he builds a life that makes him happy. But here's the thing that's so important to get. These aren't demands. They aren't a checklist he has to complete. They're just love, made visible. They're these quiet wishes for a life well lived. And, of course, for a bond that lasts long after he's grown and started a life of his own.
So what does that lasting bond actually look like when it all goes right? Well, that brings us to this idea of the good son archetype. And look, this isn't about being perfect, not at all. It's about a connection that grows up, that matures into something that gives strength and companionship to both people.
From a parent's point of view, this ideal is all about those quiet moments of connection. It's about sharing memories and just feeling that comfort of companionship. It's that feeling of knowing you're still a real part of his life, that the things you tried so hard to teach him, like kindness and integrity, are actually living on through him. It's the quiet hope that all the sacrifice was worth it, that you've created a legacy not just of a name, but of love.
Now, it would be really easy to just file all of this under emotions, right? Just family feelings. But what if I told you that the benefits of this bond are actually concrete? They're measurable. This is not just wishful thinking. We have solid psychological research that shows just how important this is over a whole lifetime.
To really get this, we've got to go back a bit to 1992. That's when a really important study was published in the Journal of Family Issues. And what this research did was look at the long-term relationships between parents and their adult sons and what the real-world psychological effects were.
And the results? They were crystal clear. The study found that sons who kept up positive, supportive relationships with their parents were way less likely to suffer from psychological distress. I'm talking lower rates of depression, of anxiety, of feeling isolated. The quality of that bond, built on things like talking openly and just being there for each other, was a direct predictor of better mental health in their adult lives.
But here's what's really fascinating. This is not a one-way street, not even close. The benefits flow right back to the parents in a huge way. When a son is emotionally resilient and connected to others, it directly boosts a parent's own sense of satisfaction and peace as they get older. Parents with close, communicative adult sons, they report being happier with their lives, having a stronger sense of purpose. It's a truly symbiotic relationship that pays dividends for everyone, for decades.
So that's the ideal. It's a beautiful picture, isn't it? A connection that just gets stronger over time. But we said we were going to be unflinching, and that means we have to ask a really tough question. What happens when things don't go that way? What happens when the story doesn't follow that perfect script?
And that means we have to turn and look at the shadow side of this relationship. This is where that incredible, intense parental love, the same love that brings all that joy, can actually create the potential for some really devastating fractures when it runs headfirst into reality.
And right here, this is the central paradox. Think about it. Any relationship that lasts for decades, built on such a deep foundation of love and hope, well, it's bound to have some friction. Parents and sons have expectations of each other, and a lot of the time, those expectations are never even spoken out loud.
And when life, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, doesn't meet those expectations, the potential for hurt is massive. The very thing that makes the bond so close can also make the pain so much sharper.
A lot of these painful realities, they aren't some big dramatic blow-up. It's more like a slow erosion of the bond. Broken promises, like saying you'll visit more often, but it just never happens. Unfulfilled commitments that leave a parent feeling completely let down. For some, it becomes this recurring financial strain, where the parent turns into a lifelong ATM, and their own future security just kind of dwindles with every so-called loan.
In this image, wow, it just perfectly captures what might be the most quietly devastating outcome of all. It's not the fighting or the arguments, it's the absence. The son who, maybe slowly or maybe all at once, just vanishes emotionally. And that empty chair at the dinner table becomes the symbol of a void that nothing can fill.
This quiet absence can be absolute agony for a parent. The phone calls that go unanswered, the visits that become rare, and then just stop. They're left alone with their memories, just replaying everything, trying to figure out where things went wrong. They ask themselves again and again, what did I do? And that silence, it is so often more painful than any angry word could ever be.
And then, beyond the disappointment and the distance, there are the things you never think could happen. The deeds that can just shatter a relationship completely. A deep betrayal of trust, like being lied to about something huge. Or neglect, when a parent who gave everything is just abandoned when they're at their most vulnerable. And in the absolute worst cases, you see exploitation, where a son uses his parents' love as a weapon to get what he wants. These are the things that force a parent to try and reconcile their unconditional love with an unbearable reality.
The toll this takes on a parent is this incredibly profound and complicated grief. I mean, how do you grieve for a child who's still alive? It's this messy mix of shame and guilt and anger. And underneath it all, a stubborn, persistent love that just refuses to die. Our society doesn't really have a script for this kind of loss. You can't hold a funeral for a relationship. You just live with the quiet ache of it. So what do you do? How do you even begin to navigate this? How do you hold both of these things at once? The beautiful dream you started with and the painful shadow that it might have become. This final part of our journey offers a little bit of wisdom on that very paradox.
Okay, first, it is so important to remember that these tough outcomes are possibilities. They are not prophecies. Every relationship is different. Second, the single biggest thing that can protect a relationship is open, honest communication. Saying the hard things early can prevent a much, much harder silence later on. And finally, parents who learn to hold their hopes loosely, who love their sons for the men they actually are, not the men they imagined they'd be, tend to have much stronger bonds in the long run. It's about adapting your expectations, which really is the most generous form of love.
This old proverb, it really speaks to a fundamental shift in the parent-son relationship. As a son grows up, his primary loyalty naturally often shifts to the new family he's creating. Now, that's a healthy, normal part of life, but for parents, it can really feel like a loss. Understanding that and accepting that evolution is one of the hardest and most important parts of a parent's journey.
So in the end, the journey is never just a straight line. The parent-son bond isn't guaranteed to be perfect or beautiful all the time. It's going to bend and stretch through joy, disappointment, connection, and sometimes real painful distance. But through it all, it remains one of the most powerful forces in our lives. Even after tremendous pain, that capacity for love often somehow remains.
This final image is, well, it's haunting. A hand reaching out and there's no other hand there to take it. It just perfectly captures that deep loneliness of unreciprocated love. For a parent who feels like they've given everything and gotten only absence in return, this is the feeling. The love they have, it doesn't just vanish. It just has nowhere to go. So it lingers, and it aches. And that leaves us with this final thought to wrestle with. This love that just keeps going, through everything, through joy, through silence, through unbelievable pain, a love that doesn't need to be earned to exist. Is that the ultimate burden of being a parent? Or is that the miracle? Thanks for joining me on this one.